living as writers. I've had a hard time making a living as a writer here, and so in God's providence, I'm now in the radio business, where I can provide a great service to advertisers and make a very slight living doing that. But in Knoxville, there is a writer, blogger, a businessman, and a Republican activist and a former office holder in Knox County named Brian Hornback. And Brian Hornback is drawing revenues. He's drawing advertising revenues, covering the politics of the Republican and the Democratic parties, and then occasionally, I guess, people who are not in partisan races, but who draw his notice as editor and writer at brianhornback.com. He's 49 years old. He and his wife, Rachel, have 3 children, and he's been for 24 years in the grocery food sales business. And for him, well, politics is like you're my listener's golf game. You play golf, and he writes about politics at brianhornback.com, which has been a website, a blog website for about 10 years now. Brian, welcome to our show.
Thank you, David. Thanks for allowing me to be on here today. It's a great honor, and I couldn't have asked for a better introduction than what you just gave me.
Well, we like to see the media expanding its service to the public, and you have a very large public, it seems, given the fact that your website offers monthly rates for advertisers, and that many of the people who advertise with you are congressmen and commissioners and people looking for positions as assessor of property and the like. And they advertise with you because they know what do they know about your website? You, the writer of this of brianhornback.com. What do they know?
What they know is they know that I have a large readership, and the readership is extensive, and it continues to grow. And I think that's partly due to the fact that a lot of the mainstream news sources have gone behind paywalls. And the fact of the matter is, whatever I choose to write about, or whatever David Tulis chooses to write about, we're doing this as a passion. We're doing it as a hobby. At the same time, we're informing the masses, and that's something that the mainstream media has really just tried to make money on. And granted, they've got to make money in order to pay their reporters, but at the same time, they're charging for news, but they're not giving any in-depth reporting. And that's one of the things that I've tried to make brianhornback.com a little bit different about, is that a lot of times I'll find a story in the mainstream Knoxville media or East Tennessee media, and it doesn't really give the backstory. It doesn't open up the door to truly shine a light on the story. And I'm fortunate enough, because I've been active politically for 30-some years in East Tennessee, that I've got the sources that I can sometimes lift the rug up and kind of show some of the dust particles that exist within the story that the mainstream media just doesn't have the time, energy, or want to get into.
Well, can you give an example of a story that's come out recently in which you do lift up that corner of the carpet and look under?
Sure. The Knox County Mayor, Tim Burchett, had some property, had a garage over in a certain area of Knox County, and discovered that he was leasing it out to a lady to run a weekend antique junk flea market type operation. It's a garage that didn't have public restrooms and didn't have a certificate of occupancy, so there was no assurance that the public was safe when they went there. They had several festivals where they had food trucks there, and if that had been Brian Hornback, I'm sure I would have been shut down a lot quicker. That business operated from May until October when I exposed the fact that there was no certificate of occupancy, and they have applied for a certificate of occupancy immediately upon the report that I filed that I posted on November the 4th. But since then, within the last week, the county mayor has sold that property for $450,000 to an LLC. And so there'll be more to come on that story. But that's a story that I broke, that the Knoxville News Sentinel followed up on, And there's other stories like that, but that's the most recent example.
Well, now, how do you manage to do your writing? The listener wants to know, okay, he's a businessman, and yet he seems to be very connected and going to meetings and calling people and meeting people for coffee in restaurants and there at the little market mall in downtown. How do you do that? Is your job in the grocery food sales business full time, or are you somehow half time and then do half time on your website and blog?
No, it's clearly, as you alluded to in the introduction, it is. I do work full time, and most of my writing happens basically at night, and on weekends. Occasionally I'll be able to have a cell phone conversation with someone during the day that kind of plants a seed of something, and then I'm able through email and to request documentation. But as far as putting all my stories together, publishing my stories, unless it's just a real quick something I can do on a break during the day, all that happens at night and on weekends.
How concerned are you and how careful are you, Brian Hornback, to present both sides of a story? That is the hallmark of the professional journalist. They'll maybe look down at you in the way you write, but it seems to me a good thing to have, you might say, the extension of grace in a story about a dispute between, let's say, two parties. You quote each party fairly and accurately and present each party's perspective in its best light. That seems to be, at least in theory, the way professional journalists run their newspapers and their television stations. Do you follow that rule too?
No, I'm very clear to tell people that I am a citizen journalist. I consider myself really to be more of a citizen opinion writer. I will make attempts to get both sides of a story, but if I feel passionately about a story, then I go ahead and run with it, and all under the caveat that this is what I base this on the information I have, and in no way would I ever hold myself up to be a reporter for any of the mainstream journalistic publications. It is purely a citizen journalist role, a citizen journalist editorial opinion.
So your reporting and your analysis and your editorializing, Brian, has an argument to make, and how can we summarize the argument theory? Are you say I'm writing for defense of taxpayers, or what is the ideal behind your practice?
Well, let's say, for example, the situation with the county mayor's property that was being rented for a business that didn't have a particular occupancy. I believe in that context, I was looking at it from the perspective of, if Brian Hornback goes out and opens up Brian Hornback consignment sales, then I would expect that as the owner of that building, as the owner of that business, that I'm going to familiarize myself with the ordinances and the rules within that governmental jurisdiction. I'm going to ensure that people who come to my business, A, have a bathroom and not a porta potty. I'm going to ensure that if one of those, if a handicapped individual comes, that they would have access to that building. And so in that context of that particular story, I came at it from the idea that as a business owner, would I want the county mayor being able to not follow the same rules and regulations that I am required to follow?
Well, when you wrote those stories, Brian, did you go out of your way to get comment from the man who was the object of the story?
I made numerous attempts to contact the county mayor through text messaging and phone calls, to which none of those were returned. But he did respond to the writer at the Knoxville News Sentinel, and so the only comments that I could attribute to the county mayor were through the comments that were published in the Knoxville News Sentinel, because the county mayor ignored numerous attempts at me, also through his communications director, give me any comment, and I have text messages to show that.
So what you're saying, Brian Hornback, is that officials won't deal with you as they would deal with a News Sentinel reporter, because somehow you're less. You're just a citizen journalist. You're just a blogger, and they need not pay attention to you. But because you have a lot of traffic among readers in Knox County, you can sustain your website, at least all the costs of running your website, with advertising, right? You charge $175 for a display ad on your website per month, and in election season you have quite a few of those.
Let's circle back to that one thing. It's kind of funny that these folks recognize the impact of BrianHornback.com when it's beneficial to them. They'll call me and say, "Hey, here's a story idea." But when it's a story that's unfavorable, they don't want to answer the call. But I do have numerous times where the county mayor and other elected officials have called me to talk about a story, or if it's a story that's not unfavorable, they will respond. So they do get attribution when they will talk to me about stories. It's only in the one instance that I've referred to today where it was not in the mayor's interest to necessarily respond to me that I didn't get a response. But yes, what happened was the website began in 2004. I started offering advertisements in 2013. So I operated from 2004 to 2013 without any revenue. And it was just basically my gift to the community if they chose to read it. And if they didn't, then, it was just me having a soapbox to be able to have my views known. In 2013, I did start offering advertising. And so, since February of 2013, I have been able to pay back a little bit of the cost of the operation of the website. But, clearly it's not something I'm going to retire on.
No, but your costs of running a website are virtually nil, but the cost you've earned probably several $1,000s a year since you started taking advertising. That covers not just the website, but your travel, your time, you're spending time in filing open records requests and meeting people and buying lunch for someone whom you want to interview. Those are all expenses connected with being a writer and a publisher. So you are making headway. You're making real headway as a publisher.
Right. I would agree with that.
Independent media.
And you're right. It's what people don't understand is they can start if they have a passion for something, no matter what that issue is. For me, it's political, government operations. But if your listeners out there have a passion for something, Google owns blogspot.com. You can go to blogger.com. You can go in and start your own blog tomorrow at no cost. And even when you buy a domain, and even when you host your content on your own server, the costs are minimal. And yes, in 2014, I made somewhere in the neighborhood of $5,000 in revenue. Again, it's nothing to retire on, but granted, it has gone from a negative ledger from 2004 to 2013 to somewhat of a positive ledger in the fact that there is now revenue and able to at least give something back for the time that I take to hopefully provide the citizens with something more than what they're currently getting in the marketplace.
Right. Revenue is a marketplace affirmation of what you're doing. Even though people may fault what you're doing, they'll come to look at it because it is controversial. It is hyper local. It's all about Knox County, Knoxville, and it's from someone who has many connections and which are valuable. And people know when they go to BrianHornback.com that they're getting an argument and a perspective. They're not being promised that it's so-called objective. And it is from a person who's involved in some of these activities, and he's espousing his take at any given moment on a particular actor or event. Let me ask you, Brian Hornback, about open records requests. You use that device quite a bit. Tell my listener in a nutshell what an open records request is and how it can empower him, the listener, to find out what's going on in his government.
Well, the great thing about open records requests, and when I started this blog and really started looking at open records requests, it was one of those situations where I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I had a friend of mine who was knowledgeable of the law, who drafted a template for me, and so when I decide that there's documents that I need to look at, then I use this template, and I just copy paste, and I fill in what I need to fill in. And what happens is, particularly on the mayor's business, or the mayor's previously owned property that had an illegal business operating out of it, I sent this open records request to the county asking for the certificate of occupancy. I got an instantaneous reply that there was no certificate of occupancy. And then I began to ask for the documents for the application. Within a couple of 3 days, applications were filed, and I had to make another request. And Knox County has been very, very cooperative in ensuring that those are not drug out. There's a period of time, 7 days, that they have to reply, and if they can't give it to you within 7 days, and they have to tell you when you can expect to receive it. And so, it could get drug out for 30, 45, 50 days, or an indefinite period of time, choosing on whether or not they really want to comply. The neighboring county in Loudoun County had an issue where it was very cost prohibitive for a citizen journalist to obtain some documents. And I believe you were at that meeting back in September, David, when some of that detail was hashed out. But not to get in depth on that, but it's been very beneficial to me. Only in the time that I've been requesting open records have I felt like I was being intentionally slow walked, and that was in mid-July of this year by the school system. And I was still able to get the information in a timely manner to report to my readers about an issue that pertained to a local election.
This is David Tulis. We're talking with Brian Hornback, who's a blogger of gaining note as an independent media provider, an independent reporter, and editorialist in Knox County. His website is brianhornback.com, which he's been operating since 2004. He started taking advertising in 2013. And like Chattanoogan.com here in Chattanooga, it provides a living for the operator, not, in his case, not a rich living, but nonetheless covers all of his expenses and encourages him, as money coming in is always an encouragement, a market signifier that the work is valuable. It's valued by people who advertise and read. And as a media personality in Knoxville, coming from behind, if you will, or coming from underneath, he's challenging the established reporting mechanisms in the local press, the Knoxville News Sentinel, and the television stations. Well, Brian, so you use open records requests, and you're gaining headway. And is there a story coming up that, or do you have, just real quickly here, do you have any kind of stories that might be of interest to a Chattanooga reader, something that tells about the state in general, or is it only about Knoxville?
Well, things. I am getting a greater reach out of Knoxville now. I've had a candidate running for public office in Loudoun County, the county just south of Knox, that is advertising on brianhornback.com right now. And clearly, if there are stories that come to my mind that I decide I want to editorialize on, or I want to dig a little deeper, I'm always open to do that. That I'm following very closely the House Republican caucus. The legislature begins session next week, and on the 12th of January, the Tennessee Republican caucus are convening, and I believe one of your state legislators from Chattanooga, Representative Gerald McCormick, is in leadership with the House Republican caucus. They're meeting on whether or not the Tennessee whip, the Republican whip, Representative Jeremy Durham from Franklin, has had some legal issues, and also he offered a letter asking for a sentence leniency for a convicted child pornographer. And so the House caucus will be meeting behind closed doors on the 12th of January to determine the future of Mr. Durham in a position of as Republican whip. I'm following that story rather closely. Was able to get a response from all of the Knoxville area Republican legislators, with the exception of one. And so I was able to get 5 responses, and one legislator has refused to opine on how he intends to pursue
This is David Tulis. We're here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
After this cold and frosty start, had lots of sunshine for your Wednesday. A nice afternoon, a little warmer, highs back into the upper 40s. Tonight, fair lows 28 to 31. For Thursday, becoming partly cloudy, still dry, back into the lower 50s with a few showers marching in late Thursday night through Friday morning. It's refund season. Come into your local H&R Block office and let their experienced tax professionals help you get every dollar you deserve. Your maximum refund is guaranteed at H&R Block. And I'm Swargene 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Hoare on AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business and becoming self-sufficient. Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years, a 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. 875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Call me now, 875-5621.
You have an event coming up for the holidays, or maybe it is your daughter's wedding, or maybe just a church or office party, then you need to select Choo Choo Barbecue. That's correct, Choo Choo Barbecue. Whether you like pork, chicken, or beef, oh yes, Choo Choo Barbecue with their savory rub flavor. Oh my goodness, it's making me hungry right now. You add in their delicious smoked aroma, and you have set the table for a perfect meal with Choo Choo Barbecue. That's right, Choo Choo Barbecue. Why don't you give them a call right now? 423-843-9554. That's 843-9554. Call 423-843-9554. Choo Choo Barbecue. You know where it's located, off of Hickson Pike, right there at the Valley Brook area. Don't kid yourself. Your stomach is already on the way.
While politicians debate climate change and taking our guns, they leave America vulnerable to disaster. You need to act now to keep your family safe and prepared. Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have long-term storage food? Do you have the skills and mindset to survive a disaster? If not, what are you waiting for? Call P5 Preparedness right now, 423-602-2175. Do you honestly think the government is going to help you? If you do, you are wrong, dead wrong. Don't get caught unprepared. Let the experts at P5 Preparedness get you ready for any emergency or disaster situation. Today, we offer a wide range of classes for the beginner on how to prepare, as well as the expert prepper. We stock a wide range of supplies, including long-term storage food, water filtration, outdoor gear, tactical gear, and plate carriers. P5 Preparedness, East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel Road. You will see the Army Deuce and a Half truck, 423-602-2175, 1309 Panorama Drive, Chattanooga, P5Preparedness.com.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Most global markets taking a beating, with investors jumpy over the latest claim by North Korea that it has successfully carried out a hydrogen bomb test.
North Korea's main ally, China, one of the first nations to criticize, saying Pyongyang did the test despite universal objection. North Korea said the test was defensive, adding it will not disarm, while Washington remains, quote, hostile.
Fox Radio's Alistair Wanklin in the Asia Bureau.
Among scientists, there is skepticism of the claim that this was a hydrogen bomb. The tremor was similar in size to North Korea's last test. Japan today sending planes to collect airborne particles.
The Dow sinking some 200 points at the open. Apple announcing it set a record for holiday season sales as customers snapped up $1.1 billion on apps and in-app purchases in the 2 weeks ending January 3rd.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. The home was damaged by a fire on Monday night. Firefighters managed to contain it to a bedroom and put it out. The damages have been listed at $15,000. The Red Cross has responded to assist the family with its immediate needs. In Fort Oglethorpe, a Golden Corral caught on fire, went up in smoke. Happened at around 12:30 Wednesday morning. Business is on Battlefield Parkway. There's no word yet on if there are any injuries. Sources say the incident involving the Ottawa basketball high school team may have been videotaped by one of the people involved. One informant saying these attacks are a ritual for freshmen, and what happened in this case is not an isolated incident. He said 4 of the Ottawa team members were abused, claiming that the youngest was abused more because he resisted. And the city council is voting on whether or not to require licenses for pet owners who own more than 8 pets within the city limits. At least 2 city councilmen agree we need some restrictions.
When the weather turns bad, turn to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. On the net, hotnewstalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. From the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Chattanooga, we've got you covered. When the weather turns bad, the Tennessee Valley turns to Hot News Talk Radio.
Go, 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 go. You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
What to make of the Ottawa High School queer rape case and the abuse of students that is said to be, according to David Carroll's most recent report, said to be a kind of a common thing among ball players on the team. This is David Tulis, and we're brought to you by Choo Choo Barbecue here in Hickson, right near the Valley Brook Golf Course. That's Choo Choo Barbecue, where there's pork, chicken, or beef, and you can enjoy a secret rub on the meat and a delicious smoked flavor on your sandwiches or on your platter. Make sure you eat there at Choo Choo Barbecue of Hickson, and catering is something that's offered as well by this locally owned, loco-centric home-based restaurant. The number is 870-7894. That's 870-7894. That's for catering, but you don't have to call ahead to come in and eat. Just come in the new digs at Choo Choo Barbecue up on the hill there, and not too far from its longtime former location. Also, want to give you a name to think about if you're going to be planning a plan B and having a plan B from your current situation financially and in terms of your employment. And that would be Bruce Krebs, who runs Entrepreneur Source. Bruce will help get you into a franchise that fits your background, your interest, your inclination, maybe the fact that you want to do something completely different from the field in which you've been working all of your life, and you have your wife's help possibly, or the help of a daughter back from college, maybe in your business. He'll find a franchise in the service sector that fits you perfectly and all of your interests. It's Entrepreneur Source. That's Bruce Krebs. Bruce Krebs. Call him today. Get on his calendar for an exploratory meeting about your interest and your desire to invest in yourself. Invest in a franchise business. 875-5621. That's 875-5621. Bruce is very well informed, a longtime former executive in the textile sector, has been very successful getting people into franchises, and you don't have to pay him a dime. His fee is covered by the franchisor, and he can help get you on your signature loan capital up to $150,000 in a very interesting program. Also, if you need any printing done, make sure you go to Advantage Printing. Advantage Printing, which is where I get my homeschool newsletter mailed, and it does printing, it does mailing services, in-house design, even, and very large format projects. If you have something that's, let's say, 60 inches across and 40 feet long, right, a banner perhaps in a gym or a large room that you are going to use for an event, perhaps, you can take care of that for you at Advantage Printing. Advantage Printing, 629-1800. That's 629-1800, right near the Food City in Brainerd Road, just by the Belvoir Light there in Brainerd. This is David Tulis. We are dissenters from the common argument, and that is that far is better than near, and that big is better than small, and that complex is better than simple. This argument is made continually by academia, by the media, and of course by concerned people in government who want to have more of what they've been giving us for the past 150 years. And we say just the opposite. And in the footnotes, where the fleas fight with scimitar and javelin, in the small type in the 6-point font, you have more of the same, that corporate is better than personal, and that abstract is somehow better than physical. We dissent from that too. And you, my listener, you know the true order of things, right? You hear those arguments from the good people and their shills, and you know exactly how things should go. Well, what do we make of this Ooltewah community scandal? I think that one larger story that David Carroll and other reporters are bringing out is that this is, after all, this is a mass institution. It's a state institution. It is not community, right? Ooltewah High School is not community, though I think people have been convinced by public schools that somehow their neighborhood public school belongs to them, that it belongs to them, it reflects them, it really is there to serve them, that they somehow are the client, the party being served. And I dare say that these folks are being misled by the marketing of the state, which is really the client for the public school. The public school is there to serve the state and its interest and its desire to have people dependent. It really doesn't want people to be independent, to be mavericks, right? That's the worst thing that state government, that big business wants, is the real maverick, the real independent person, the real do-it-yourself person who goes his own way, who sings his own song, who writes his own music, who is a figure in his own poetry, right? That's the kind of person the state doesn't want, and neither does big business. And so we have these school systems, which are mass settings, and in which we have these cliques. They're called ball teams, and in these cliques you have the newcomers, the new arrivals, who are to be properly chastised and put in their place by their betters, who are the seniors, right? Is the solution more rules and more regulations? Well, a lot of people think that if we just make some new directives, we'll solve what is a human problem, which Christians would say is the sin problem. Christians met yesterday at Christ Way Church in Ooltewah, after which one woman said, a mom said, "Our school is awesome," she said, and pointing out the students organized that kind of prayer vigil on behalf of a queer rape group of defendants and a victim who spent 8 days or so in the hospital for having a pool cue placed up his rectum by adventurous school colleagues. The mayor, Andy Burke, has issued a directive that runs for several paragraphs, visible at Chattanooga.com. And hazing, he says, defined as any intentional or reckless act by one student acting alone or with others, which is directed against any other student that endangers the mental or physical health or safety of that student. That's all in a parentheses. And then it goes back to say, to the main sentence, is abuse and will not be tolerated at any building or facility managed by the city of Chattanooga or any program facilitated by the city. The safety and well-being of children in Chattanooga does not rest on one agency, he says, organization or individual. Therefore, the city will establish, it should say, avenues for students to anonymously report abuse, even if it does not occur on city-owned property. So we have more the snitch culture developed here by this anonymous line in which people can be reported. And remember that you can, if you have someone you don't like, someone against whom you have a jealousy, right, or a vindictive thought, you can call the city line and report anonymously on that person and accuse that person. That's not very local economy. That's really kind of Nashville and Washington think, it seems. And the mayor goes on to say, so swift action can be taken. Okay, well, there you have the accusation made it anonymously, encouraging this effort to stop by rules and regulation by reporting anonymously, stop an abuse of culture. David Carroll has been doing some heavy lifting on this story. TV3 leading the pack, I'd say, in as far as Chattanooga coverage goes, and having devoted at least 2 reporters to this story. That's why we have, that's why we have newspapers. That's why we have television stations, news departments that justify all the advertising. To pay for people such as David Carroll, longtime experienced newspaper media television journalist here in town, to cover these doings. He says the younger students reportedly told investigators that older students tell them they have had to be beaten in, and it is a ritual at Ottawa High School. The victim says such incidents happen at school as well, in the locker room with the lights turned off. The younger students say they are told by older students that it must be done. Okay, this is just how we do it, and it has to be this way. It cannot be questioned. It really cannot be defied. They say the actions predate Coach Andre Tank Montgomery, who has been on the coaching staff for 3 years, David Carroll says, including 2 as head coach. They reportedly told investigators that Montgomery has not personally witnessed the beat-ins. Well, this is all of great note. There was a prayer vigil last night. Michelle Herron at WRCB TV reports about that, and also Alexandria Adams at our CBS affiliate TV12 reports on that event as well. When I heard the interviews, I got the sense that the Christian people being interviewed were kind of blobified. The story is of a crime, a homosexual crime of sexual nature, an abusive form of assault, right? It's assault involving also battery being the threat, right? Threat of injury is the battery, assault is the actual contact. So you have assault and battery. And somehow when I hear these quotes, it's as if somehow the whole is glossed over. There's no real distinction between the victim and the perpetrator, and that Christianity concerns itself only with healing, right? Only with healing and forgiveness. Young Life leader Tyler Mazarimas said that everyone needs to turn to faith, according to CBS TV12's report. I think we need to show grace and show forgiveness and show love to the families involved. He says, these kids, yeah, they made a mistake that is going to haunt them for the rest of their lives. But like the community is still going to show them love. And through all of this, another quote from a former student, Doreen Flaherty, says, through all this storm, that God is still in control, and God can use something like this to bring people together and show them that he is glorious. Well, yes, God is glorious, but the grammatical syntax of that sentence is not. Pointing out that God is sovereign over all things and that ordains all things, even the evil, though he is not to be understood as the source of any evil. Evil comes from within the human heart. It is a part of the fall that is St. Paul calls it the law of sin in our members. It's there, even though people have repented of being slaves of sin. They've repented to God, and they are practicing Christians. There still is sin in their members. And here we have young men, two of whom are still in a jail in the Gatlinburg area, and they are being accused of a crime. My name is David Tulis, and we are here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And I wanted to say, just before I forget, what it is that the local economy party would have in it. These are somewhat whimsical notions from the writer Wendell Berry, a man who opposes the interstate highway system under President Johnson, the war measure, right? The interstate highway systems are part of the federal war machine in their early conception. And why? Because they cut through mountains. That of course they have to do if they're going to be efficient, right? Efficiency always cuts through the mountain. And Wendell Berry, in one of his essays, very movingly describes how the Indians, they didn't cut through mountains. They always followed the land that God put there. Their trails accounted for the land and always found the best way to go from point A to point B without overthrowing overthrowing the geography. And yet here we, in our modern time, we overthrow anything we want. There is no sacred thing. The land is not sacred. Genetic combinations are not sacred. We can redesign. We can make designer diseases. We can have patents, as does the CDC, on Ebola, right? This dreadful virus that poisons all your organs in the course of a couple of weeks. Well, Wendell Berry says that the local community, if you want to call it that, have some themes, some theses. And here's what we should be doing, he says, if we are going to support local economy. And I would add the free market. The free market is not as close to Wendell Berry's thinking as it is to mine. But he says, always ask if any proposed change or innovation, what will this do to our community? How will this affect our commonwealth, right? Our commonwealth. Always include, he says, local nature, the land, the water, the air, the native creatures within membership of the community. So there's somewhat of a humanizing of animal life, but not, I don't think he goes too far. Always ask how local needs might be supplied from local sources, including the mutual help of neighbors. Again, that's extremely important. That's where social capital comes from. And if we're going to survive with less damage and wreckage than more, we need to consider these things. Well, this is David Tulis, and my number is 800-8949. That's 800-8949. And someone has made note of that number and is going to give me a call. And caller, you are on the air here with David Tulis, AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to talk about that hazing rate, but before then, who's that nut job you were just quoting?
What did this nut job say? I'm not catching it.
I mean, first of all, I don't know who he is. Secondly, why should we care what he says? He sounds pretty crazy to me. Would he be one of those modern day greenies? So, but on the hazing rate, I am proud to say that in gym class I failed. Where people typically pass gym, I failed gym every year. I refused to participate. I refused to run. I refused to get in those little faggy shorts and was wearing white socks and go in locker rooms with naked boys. There's something sick about that. The whole thing. Evidence and so-called Christians. I was watching Channel 3. I need to be caring and forgiving. No, we don't. We need to tie those boys that raped allegedly that other boy to a whipping post like they used to do in Delaware 40 years ago and whip them. Come on. It makes Christians look like nuts. Oh, it's nothing. Really? Let someone rim a pole up your rear end. Come on. What is going on in these schools? They should be closed down. Just like every Catholic church should be closed down because of rapist priests. These schools need to be closed down. Why don't we go to grow some balls here in Tennessee?
Well, make sure you're no more explicit than that. Okay, we have an irate caller saying that schools should be closed down for their rape and abuse culture, and indeed he asked, as David Carroll and the other TV3 writers have pointed out, we've had since this homosexual rape of a boy by older students, we've had or the school has enjoyed the prosperity of 2 or 3 ball games since this story broke. There's no sense that this violation is exceeding, right? There's nothing here that shocks the conscience. It's not that great, that big of a deal, and yet we are going to be lamenting it, and there'll be, of course, criminal trials of these young men and so on. And should public schools be shut down? Well, probably the market will shut them down as useless, and their immorality. The immorality of public school is not just in a queer rape of a boy on a ball team outing. That's minor, I would say, compared to the whole. The whole of the public school agenda is ultimately very, very humanistic, very materialist in its scope, in the way it's thinking. Schooling is a form of behavior modification to make ordinarily bright, interested, curious children into flaccid souls who have redemption in conformity and have the redemption in employment, right? Employment, obedience to the state, and complicity with all that other people do. That's sort of innocuous, right? Innocuous and dull, and worst of all, boring. That may be the greatest crime of public school, that it turns everything fascinating, like history, into so much tedium. and boredom. And all the established categories are presented to you, and you're supposed to believe these things. And if you remember anything at all, just remember the categories. You don't have to remember the souls of the people described in the historical narrative. Now, if we're going to have a local economy, Wendell Berry says, I want to tell you just a couple more points that he offers about how to think in terms of a local economy party, if you will. Develop properly scaled value-adding industries for local products to ensure that the community does not become merely a colony of the national or global economy. Develop small-scale industries. That's you, my listener, starting your own business. You. That's right. To support the local farm and or forest economy. Strive to produce as much of the community's own energy as possible. Strive to increase earnings in whatever form within the community and decrease expenditures outside. Make sure that money paid into the local economy circulates within the town or the community for as long as possible before it is paid out. Make the community able to invest in itself by maintaining its properties, keeping itself clean without dirtying someone else's property, caring for its old people, and teaching its children. In other words, teaching is a lococentric function, and yet Ooltewah High School is a state function. It's a state and federal function. It is kind of a spaceship that has landed in northeast Chattanooga area, and it's there, and somehow we think it belongs to us, and yet it is really an alien entity with an alien ideology, a very narrow, very bigoted way of thinking, and looking at people as just so much materials. Hair, spit, and bone. That's the kind of materialist ethic that you find at the state's institutions of higher learning. See, Wendell Berry says that the old and the young take care of one another. You can't have that in a school society. The young must learn from the old, not necessarily and not always in school. There must be no institutionalized child care and homes for the aged. You see, these are offending. They offend local economy and the idea of the free market. The community knows and remembers itself by the association of young and old. Why segregation? Why do we accept being segregationists here in brightened, enlightened America, here in Chattanooga, Tennessee? We are segregationists. We have children locked up with other children and no mixing with businessmen or the old.
After this cold and frosty start, we've had lots of sunshine for your Wednesday. A nice afternoon, a little warmer, highs back into the upper 40s. Tonight, fair lows 28 to 31.